Greetings, true believers, and welcome to episode 69 of the Pull List Podcast, a bi-weekly show about comics, pop culture, and faith. My name is Chris Poirier, and with me, as always, is the one, the only, I don't have a creative response for this week, Hector.
I also have a non-creative response for your vague introduction. Hi!
That seems accurate. That's Hector, I'm Chris, so you know what that means. It's time to strap yourselves in and prepare yourselves for We've Got Comic Sign.
Better put the word out. Can't wait for the nerd out. Better put specs on. Better bring next song. I cut handsome checks.
On today's episode of the Pull List, we've got a great show for you. We're going to hit the latest news that you need to know, our must-pull recommendations from the past 2 weeks or so. We've been on track, so it's mostly past 2 weeks.
It's past 2 weeks.
Yeah. It's been that way. So our new fave number ones and so much more. This is the Pull List Podcast. Stepping into the high-tech, high-powered newsroom, we've got lots of stuff or things that might be at least talkable beyond poking fun at DC and Marvel's summer events, which I still don't want to talk about. But we are going to talk about DC, and I think we mentioned it's got to be 3-4 episodes ago now. Like, there was the sprinklings of something was happening on the back of Warner Brothers lot, and it wasn't the Animaniacs.
I was about to say, it was the Warner Brothers.
And Sister Dot. So
I would actually trust Dot over most Warner Brothers leadership.
So let's talk about that. So Warner Brothers has been acquired, sold, etc. so many times. You know, AT&T was in there in the mix. Warner Brothers got in the mix. DC got procured. They shook up the snow globe and threw it at the wall, fired people, moved people around, said digital really loud. Everybody kind of nodded and went back to what they were doing.
Let me just say this one thing, and I know it's jumping the gun to one of the pulls, but to say this, the fact that I bet you it's the same thing, that Flashpoint Beyond opens to a chalkboard with Batman standing in front of it where it says 5G averted. And I'm like,
right, and it's crossed out.
And it's crossed out. I'm like, you do schwaffles. Like,
yeah. Let's lean into that reality and just be like, we're acknowledging that this is a thing. So 5G is now actually continuity in the fact that it didn't happen.
But that's also very negative and ugly towards, Didio on a public
I agree.
way. And I was like, that's disrespectful.
Yeah, it's okay, Dan. We still love you.
Absolutely.
So anyway, yeah, there's a lot to this. It is the short version, I suppose, of the conversation. But anyway, so the latest with Discovery now being technically the top parent. I'm losing track, but that's what I think is happening here.
Yes.
So yes, the people that bring you Discovery Channel and endless specials on the Second World War and aliens are the controlling interest, and they're like, cool, we are shaking the snow globe, and everybody and their cousin freaked out. Like, at time of recording, this happened within 24 hours. So everybody's still kind of doing their hot take. But they released kind of their bigger plans for the world of WB, what HBO Max is doing, and DC. And a lot of people noticed that the one thing they didn't talk about, like, at all, was the publishing division at DC, which had a bunch of comic book creators going, we still work here. But that said, a lot of them also are like, we think stuff's coming. The answers, or at least input on what's going on, is coming, or we hope it's coming, because the rest of the conversation was a continuation of, well, we've got really cool IP, and this is the one thing that did get said out loud during this press conference, or at least press release, was that, you know what, we're gonna not license our DC property anymore. We're going to bring it entirely back in-house and maintain it.
What was being licensed, like the WB stuff?
Well, that's what I was trying to figure out, honestly, but I'd have to dig deeper into looking at what was technically licensed outside of RIP proper and what wasn't, but it makes me wonder if maybe there was a lot of stuff that's on the drawing board that we don't know about that they're like, yeah, that's a bad idea. Because if you recall, DC and Marvel kind of in the middle of COVID were kind of like, well, how do we money make without print publishing? That there was a second that both companies very seriously looked at we are literally throwing money at a printing press and we're not sure it's working. And some of the solutions was to license off the print side of the business to either an IDW or a Dark Horse or a Titan type company that, lives in licensing. And Marvel tested those waters with a lot of the young adult and children's books that were coming out from IDW for a while. And that stopped recently. That kind of just stopped and everyone went, wait, what happened? So it could be stuff involved in that. But basically, from what we've seen and what I've seen a few folks talk about is we don't know what's going to happen at the publishing division. We still don't technically know what's going to happen. But there does seem to be a doubling down on, well, the HBO Max thing is working really well for us. That Peacemaker is really, really great. And like literally the executives at Discovery are saying this. They're like, you need to do more of that. And they also said, hey, last time I checked, DC's empire is built on Superman, right? So give us more Superman. And I found myself saying, that's either out of context brilliant, or quite possibly one of the more ignorant things I've heard an executive taking on DC's platform, because those of us out here in comic book world know we've tried to reinvent, reslate, retell Superman a lot in the last decade. And it's gone, And I don't know if that's just every time we've tried, we've just not gotten the stories that have stuck, and that's really a creative and editorial oops, or if just America's kind of overhearing that story.
Well, the fact that I think the response to changing Superman's motto shows that America is not unified by the concept of Superman the way they once were.
Right. Yeah. That's probably fair. And what's strange is where Batman succeeded at creating kind of an extended universe. We got the Bat family. Even on other sides of DC, we got the Shazamly. That when Superman kind of started doing that, there were a couple things that went really well. Like Super Sons went pretty well, as far as I'm concerned.
Batman.
I enjoyed that book. Yeah, I know, but
Super Sons went well because of Damian.
Well, that's unfortunate. Yeah, maybe my brain did just file that way. It's like, hey, but there's okay. You're not wrong.
Jonathan was a generic super symbol wearing anybody that could have been anybody. You can replace Connor with any other superhero's kid. As long as he,
all right.
As long as he's a submissive to Damian.
That's it. Yep. See, we're gonna get added at for that, and you're not on the platform that I'm gonna get added at for that. That's not fair. So.
Yes, you can file all your complaints with my opinions with Chris on Discord, and I will hear them via Chris.
And it'll be great. So yeah,
but I'm not wrong.
No, I don't think you're wrong.
Jonathan is a great character, but nobody cared that it was Jonathan. And you know why nobody cared it was Jonathan? Because you look at how they're treating Superman, son of Jor-El or Kal-El now. Yeah. It's like, while it's good, Tom Taylor's writing for it is fine. People don't take him as Superman, and they won't. And like, they still look at him as like, you just time warped Superboy so that you could have layers, and still not functional.
Yeah. So that's where we're kind of at. That Discovery is doing something. And here's the other piece. This is the important piece. And so I took the primary source because Variety actually pushed this. And Bleeding Cool obviously pushed this as well, but they pushed it with like an outlandish theory that I'm going to mention now because I think it is at least valid to the conversation, but we have no evidence of it, is that on top of all these changes that are potentially coming, the main message from Discovery's leadership is that they are going to do a $3 billion cost savings across the enterprise. That was B as in billion cuts, which means somebody gonna lose their job. And they didn't really outline where that was coming or what's happening. So theory coming from the spin masters at Bleeding Cool is that this is a massive reconsolidation of the entire company so that they can resell all of it or parts of it. And most of us want to dismiss that, but from a portfolio of companies approach, that is unfortunately kind of what big corporations do when they want to restructure something to make a lot more money, is you cut it down to its bones, you restructure its primary business lines to do the things that it's supposed to do really well, and then ask for a junk load of money. Cash out, bro down, as South Park says. I'm kind of hopeful that that's not the case. Because I don't think anything good happens in the publishing division if that's the case over the next year. And as we'll talk about when we get to it, because we have to talk about the Flashpoint Beyond and the DC continuity thing that's currently happening, that I'm still finding myself buying less and less books every week. And that's not a good look. So, yeah.
I think I bought more books. I think I bought a steady amount of books over the last 2 weeks. But, like, you know, it's a lot of that's testing the waters. And when I'm dipping my toe in stuff lately, my toe's not going back in.
Yep. Also true. So, yeah. DC and stuff. So, yeah, let's talk about some of the other cool stuff. There is good stuff going on. Sorry. Doom and gloom opening. But let's talk about some of the cool things. Matt Kent, who you've heard on this wonderful program before, is getting his own imprint at Dark Horse. And if you feel like you've heard this story before, it's because you did, but with Kevin Smith's name. So Dark Horse is handing off imprint status to some pretty big names to create their own little universes, get an imprint, have editorial control, and produce good independent comics. I don't hate it. In fact, I love it. In fact, it's so funny because we're basically doing the 1990s all over again, because once upon a time, everybody did have like 47 imprints so that creatives could have control and do stuff, and then they consolidated editorial control. So I guess what's old is new again, but I'm for it because maybe this means we get kind of creative new content out of some pretty nifty folks. So, yeah. That's pretty nifty.
It also feels to me like lazy comic production.
To an extent.
Because no shade, just on a like production level, it comes across to the idea of you get content creators to have, or you get big names to produce their own content and let you stick your label on it. Which means you've got your A, running off celebrity status. B, you don't actually have to be responsible for your own content creation. C, you reap the benefits of it, but if it doesn't work out, you can just drop them and then hook, line, and sinker some other celebrity who thinks they can write comics.
So here's the thing, and let's be fair. First of all, Matt is a comic guy.
Oh, absolutely, and so is Kevin.
Right, but I did have this conversation in my local shop yesterday of all things looking at it. This is basically the new exclusivity, right? That all these companies said, oh, we're going to stop having exclusives with content creators. And then all of a sudden, a bunch of these companies start introducing independent imprints from people that you would originally have been signing exclusive agreements with. And I think the change, though subtle, is the fact that you just kind of outlined in the middle there is exclusivity still put the editorial requirements on the company. So when it didn't do well, it was still on them because they paid the money to secure that exclusivity. They paid the money to edit and control story. This time it's like, okay, you're going to publish with us. And right, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and bye. So, interesting. I think the next one, we've talked about the DC continuity. It's called the Divine Continuum, but I'm going to talk about it in my polls. So, yes, DC is redefining their continuity, sort of, kind of, but not really. More to be continued later in the podcast. But we do want to talk about Webtoon again.
Yeah, and I saw that, but then in the light of the sale, I'm like, what? I don't even know anymore.
Right. But it could be a good sign. It actually does kind of fall in line with what they want because, again, remember, it's considered digital content, so they're not worrying about their publishing division and everything. It's not... Well, is it a license? It's not technically a license, I don't think. I think DC still controls the storytelling and everything. But this becomes a platform for them to push their content. So Webtoon, a digital web comics platform, is picking up 3 specific DC titles, stories, etc. So Red Hood, Zatanna, and Vixen are going to have multiple types of stories and storytellings that are going to be, far as I know, exclusive to Webtoons. And
yes, Webtoon exclusive.
So there's a few things that are important there, that it means the only way you will get those stories is by being over there on Webtoons and digital reading and everything. But they are new stories from those spaces. Well,
I don't know about the Vixen end, but I did more homework on the Red Hood end.
As I expected.
As you expected. This will be a continuation of the Red Hood and the Outlaws storyline with Artemis, Bizarro, and Red Hood, which was my personal favorite. And I was very sad to see that go. And now I'll be able to get more Red Hood, Bizarro, and Artemis in that way. And I'm actually really pumped about that.
And that just makes Hector happy inside. So definitely be on the lookout for that stuff. Let me see. Do we have dates? Double checking real quick to see if we have dates. Otherwise, it's one of those, keep a lookout. It's a coming. It looks like May. So summer, May, June, July-ish for most of those books to hit, or digital content to hit. And finally, we want to give you an update on the DC Round Robin tournament. So turning over to our sports desk, I guess. No? Yeah. It's like, today on the court.
Okay, for the record, bro, I don't know this is the podcast that you want to trust that people are sportsy enough to know what a round robin is, because they probably know more of the comics end than that.
Right. So it's Damian and Dick Grayson fighting for supremacy. No, it's not.
Round robin is me in a Tim Drake costume.
Womp womp. It's good though.
I'm like Ned Spider-Man. It's okay.
He's right. Got jokes. It's good. Okay. Well, I feel like most people at least know what the NCAA March Madness, everybody fills out a bracket type thing, right? So that's what's happened. There's a bracketing working from the original. It's 12? No. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 16. Of the kind of pitches of random DC continuity stories and everything. And there was all kinds of crazy stuff on the list, but we are now down to Constantine and the Demon, Vacation from Hell, Suicide Squad Dark, Superboy, The Man of Tomorrow, and Green Lantern, The Light at the End of Forever.
Is it literally called The Light at the End of Forever?
Yep.
Oh, that sounds more interesting than I thought it would.
Well, there were a couple other Green Lanterns earlier in the contest, but that's the one that has found itself forward. So we'll keep an eye on it and let you know if anything changes, updates. We should be seeing soon what DC actually is going to give us, and that's going to be great. It's going to be good times. So that is what you need to know, and that's a lot because industry stuffs. But that's our bi-weekly look at the industry and delivering you some of the inside knowledge. As always, you can join in on that conversation with Hector and I and all of your other nerdy friends over on the Love Thy Nerd Discord, not Hector, and Facebook, lots of Hector. And you can begin your geeky adventure with us. Tell us what you liked, what you hated, or possibly what we even missed. And this week we probably missed stuff because the DC shakeup is kind of there's a lot there, right?
There's a lot of depression there because it's like, can we at least have like 2 months of DC not sucking before, the world gets upended? I'm like, Batman's still technically in theaters and doing well, and y'all can't even let it hit HBO Max before you go pooping in our cornflakes. Please and thank you. Stop.
Please stop. The rest of us would like to catch up. And honestly, I think deep down there's a bunch of creators that are like, I'm also tired of like the entire fan base being like, what's happening? And us being like, oh, stuff. So yeah.
You are listening to the Pull List Podcast.
Hey everyone, I'm Hector Mirai, and this is Faith and Fandom 180 on LTN Radio. So this past weekend, I had a fun experience. I was watching TV with my family, and I got a notification in my email that I had a small sum of money going into my Square account. If you're not familiar, Square is the little doodad that you swipe credit cards and stuff on your phone, like if you're selling stuff someplace. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Why did money go in my Square account? And it hit me, oh yeah, I have an online store. And let me just tell you, I am terrible at my online store because I'll go to a Comic-Con, sell shirts and books and stickers and stuff, and I will not update my inventory. I have no idea what's actually listed on my website right now, and I absolutely reaped the consequences of that because someone took the time to go to my website, shop around, and ordered a book that I don't actually have any copies for. And so I just was not prepared. Just absolutely wasn't. And I started weighing my options. Do I tell this person, hey, sorry, I don't actually have any? Do I buy one on Amazon at full price and then turn around and mail it to this guy so that he can get the book? Or, what do I do? So I realized that at one of the churches that I've partnered with, they had bought a bunch of copies of this book to give to their students. And I was like, hey, pastor, can I have one of those back? And he brought me one. And, all worked out in the end, but, I just wasn't ready for what was actually going to be asked of me. And I think a lot of Christians are in that place. In Luke 14, verses 28 through 30, it says, suppose one of you is building a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, this person began to build and wasn't able to finish. There's a lot of us that have signed up to actually follow Jesus, and we're not actually aware of what we've committed to, what he's asking of us, and we're going to be caught off guard when he actually calls to collect what we've signed up for to serve and to follow. Remember to catch Faith and Fandom 180 every Wednesday morning on the Back Row Morning Show only on LTN Radio. And if you'd like to learn more about Faith and Fandom, head over to faithandfandom.org where you can learn about our Comic-Con ministry, podcast, memes, apparel, and book series. You can even read new chapters before they make it to the next book. I'm Hector Mirai, and thank you for spending the last 180 seconds with me.
You are listening to the Pull List Podcast with Chris Poirier and Hector Miron, part of the Love Thy Nerd podcast network.
To the comics. So yeah, Hector, tell us a little bit about what got your mojo running for this week. And looking over your polls, shocked face, but I'll let you lay it out and see if our loyal listeners catch on.
Oh no, did I do a thing?
I mean, technically for you, I would consider... Yeah, you just got it yourself?
Yeah, I just got it myself. Oops.
Yeah. All right.
This is a no DC week for me.
You heard it here first.
Missed that one. Cool. Cool.
You're not wrong.
So for me, not only that, but oh, look at me. I'm fancy.
Right?
I not only is it a DC week, it is also an all-female driven lead week. So
yes, it is.
I'm like, man, just look at me championing like
you did it.
Different leads. So first off, my first pull is She-Hulk number 3. And this is it's not like a quick moving story, but it's just Jen getting back to her lawyer life. But literally the day she becomes a lawyer again, a character I'd never heard of shows up on her doorstep, and she's literally been nurturing / testing his powers while she's also doing her lawyer day job and trying to find fashionable clothing. There's a hero / destructive human being called Jack of Hearts.
Yes.
Who Wanda helped disassemble the Avengers with and blew Jen up over Arizona or something. But either way, this dude shows up on her doorstep, confused, depowered, and like pseudo-human for the first time. But literally, the best parts of this book so far have been a strong character being gentle with broken people. And I think that's my favorite part, is like literally them sitting around just talking. Like there's at least 3/4 of this issue that's Jen and the Jack of Hearts eating pizza and talking about who everyone else has said he is versus who he actually wants to be. And it's just super wholesome. It's encouraging. It's well written. It's beautiful to look at. And like, I don't know. I grew up in the 90s with that 90s era art where She-Hulk was just, I'm gonna say this lovingly, but She-Hulk in the 90s was basically drawn to be eye candy. Like in the same way that they gave us Marvel's swimsuit issues and like that kind of weird stuff. Because like I think my first cognizant memory of She-Hulk was a Marvel swimsuit issue thing, like a trading card. Because why are you going to package scantily clad superheroes in card format to 12-year-olds? I digress. But like this is just at her actually having a life and a direction and showing compassion. I really enjoyed what they're doing with it. And it makes me really hopeful for what's going to happen when Homegirl from Orphan Black dons this role on the screen. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But She-Hulk has been a delight every step of the way. And, yeah, I will keep reading this officially. Surprisingly to me, Elektra Number 100 was really good. Did you pick that up?
I did.
Didn't like it?
I was like, I don't hate this.
I liked elements of it.
I almost put it on my list because I was like, it was right up against some of the other stuff on my list for the week. Because, yeah, there was a lot going on. And I think anytime that she is mirrored against with Typhoid Mary, interesting discussions come out of that, and this book did do that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I liked. The thing that like sold me, I was like, okay, this is going in my pulls, was the dance thing.
Yep.
There's a subtext overlay narrative discussing an intimate dance where you see Matt and Elektra put on suits and dresses, but then like basically have a rooftop battle over some very intimate dialogue or intimate like narration. And it was just a beautiful piece of art. Like, there's somebody that has been waiting years to put that one little sliver of a story on paper, because that was a passion project, is what it felt like to me. And then, but so you've got a Typhoid Mary story, you've got this intimate dance thing, and then you've got a couple cute little cartoon, like comic strip-ish ones in the back.
Right.
To me, some of the Typhoid Mary stuff was dope. It's confusing in the light of everything else right now.
Yep.
Because it does not fit it touches on canon things, but not touches on canon things. And it's just kind of a toss up there. But it is good. I walked away saying, okay, this does, out of all the Elektra centered things I've purchased over the last year, this does still feel one of the most organic pieces.
And I think the other piece of it for me, kind of in the context, was a lot of like milestone issues that end up being anthology-ish, or, you know, pulled out of the line to tell kind of a different story, or it becomes almost like an annual, that a lot of them for me just have fallen flat. But this one, because they actually told a longer story, and then, like you said, had like the smaller hits towards the end, I was like, oh, you didn't mess this up. And I think that's why it didn't make it to mine, was I wanted to acknowledge that something like this hit for me, but that it was more so you could have done much poorer and you didn't. So congrats on being kind of good.
Well, for me, if the book would have just been the dance thing, it would have made my list anyway.
Yeah.
So everything else was just like, you're also here with the Eric Klaus looking Daredevil story, or the Elektra story.
Right.
Right.
And that was the other thing that stood out to me. I was like, I kind of dig this, but yep.
So moving on with that. Oh, look, more Marvel and more Daredevil. Devil's Reign number 6. Did you make it here?
No, but I know what happens. So
okay. I say this with all the love in my early morning heart. I think I put this on my pull list because I was glad it was over. I think that was
you literally picked it up and said, "I'm seeing this one through."
I did. I picked it up. I'm seeing this one through. And my biggest thing is I don't like predictability. And like a lot of this storyline felt like very derivative, very predictable, and very much beating some old drums that just honestly didn't need to be beat. And but you do end up with yet again another Typhoid Mary and Elektra battle,
of course.
Where they're doing their shindig. You end up with Kilgrave's kids versus Kilgrave, and you end up with Luke Cage being the sound voice of reason, and you end up with a Matt Murdock versus Kingpin fight where everybody has to convince Matt not to kill Kingpin, because apparently Matt is still super upset about his fictional brother being murdered that most of the world doesn't know exists.
And that literally spent a majority of his existence in this arc being the bane of Matt's existence.
Yeah.
Dang it, Mike.
But so just to let you know where this... So and one of the fun things was, I will say this, they rickroll you on what's happening because the whole world has just watched Wilson Fisk do some dirt. And some very powerful people that make Kingpin. I did enjoy the Stromwin thing through Zdarsky's arc. There's some people that make Wilson Fisk look weak in terms of power, and he hates it.
Yep. Yeah, that's usually not a good move on the Kingpin.
And so after that one bathroom scene, good grief.
Right. Well,
but
yep.
Yeah. So after all is said and done, and the world has seen him be a douche waffle, the hit Wilson Fisk's unpublicly acknowledged son teams up with the Stromwins to get Wilson Fisk's dirt cleaned, but then also they drop the one thing that's worse than Mayor Fisk, President Fisk.
Oh no.
And they literally hold up a poster of Wilson Fisk as president and say, "This is where we're going next."
No.
And I had President Luthor vibes down my bones. I'm like, please, God, no. I don't want this. I might be out. And, like, I had an internal monologue of, like, all these things. But they're saying, we'll make you president, but you have to bend the knee. And so then, literally, Kingpin's like, all right, F it. And then just kills them.
Oh. All right.
He's like, he said, my son is watching and he needs to know that a Fisk bows to no one. And so he, like, just, I don't know if he murders both Stromwins, but he murders a Stromwin.
Well,
bloodies
it's
up
on brand.
Right. And it was like very, okay, that's good Fisk there. But he basically murders them all. And he said, tell the cops it was me. Tell the cops I orchestrated all the drama in town. Tell the cops I killed the Stromwins. Tell the cops I'm dirty as crap. And that you took me out. Peace out. You're the new Kingpin. I'm outie.
Deuces.
He literally deuces. And him and Typhoid Mary get on a boat and go on vacation. They're like, we're done. We quit. So, and she's like, Wilson, we could stay and fight and reestablish. He's like, I don't need to. You're all I want. Screw everything else. They can have it. And
are we supposed to feel good for him at this point?
I don't know, but they kind of ride that line. But they literally, like, have Wilson Fisk murder his enemies, publicly fail as a supervillain, hand his son the keys to the kingdom, and then ride off with his. They basically did The Office season 7, and they Michael and Hollied Kingpin and Typhoid Mary. And now what we're left with in Hell's Kitchen is the, Michael D'Angelo leadership of Hell's Kitchen.
Okay.
But, yeah, and so not only that, the world publicly knows that Matt Murdock is dead, but it's not Matt Murdock. So Matt Murdock no longer exists in the public eye. And so he is free to go do handy stuff, like the ninja organization, with Elektra. So Fisk and Daredevil are piecing out. And he's going to go help her do secret ninja worldy things. So it's just like they basically ended Devil's Reign by saying, all right, you're all free to go.
Thank you for participating in wanton just insanity.
They're like, we gave you Superior Wolverine, Superior Hulk. We gave you all the superheroes you love with Otto Octavius' mind. And now Luke Cage is mayor. God bless you and your family. Peace.
Peace. And you just hear a thud in the background.
It's like the microphone. Mike hits the stage, static, awkward, one person claps, and it's Chip Zdarsky. And
oh no.
So yes, my friends, but
there's still a Daredevil book from Zdarsky coming, so all right.
There's a Daredevil book called Devil's Reign Omega.
Yeah.
And I literally was reading my Pulsar this week and I saw the advertisement for that. And I'm like, no, I thought we were done. I thought we were free. At least Future State's sort of over, even though they keep making books. Please, DC, Warner Brothers, Discovery, whoever just bought this freaking company, please stop with Future State.
Yeah, I saw that and I almost turned to my shop guy and went, is that a reprint? And then I looked at it and I'm like, oh, this is. Oh, so we're still doing this.
There's still multiple new Future State books. Please and thank you.
All right.
Stop. Unless you're giving us Wonder Girl, stop it.
Yep, stop it.
Okay.
You good?
Yeah, sure.
Good. Well, starting with my pulls then.
Hold on, I still have a pull.
Oh, you do? Oh, that's right. Oh, that would have been a great transition.
It would have been a great transition. I should have done it the other way.
Yep.
This was going to be anticlimactic
Fine.
too. Rain Book 4 was nice, and it finished the story well of where they were so far. It's not over.
So the murderous Sky had a good moment?
Well, no, it was still super murderous.
Okay.
But but it also did the, and I'm not even, maybe it's a trope, I don't know, but they did the Walking Dead trope of the natural enemy disaster thing that's destroying humanity isn't the worst of humanity.
Right, it's us.
It's us, yeah. Because, and on a religious / social discussion, the main two characters of Rain, the main character of Rain is a woman named Honeysuckle. Honeysuckle was engaged to another female. The female is the first person to die in the rainstorm. I don't remember her name.
Right.
Because she died 3 seconds into the book. Her dad is a pastor, the girl who died. And her dad was still very loving and supporting to his daughter and her future spouse.
Sure.
And he gave her a loving, encouraging letter about, here's how you should love my daughter. And that letter is why this girl is literally walking across nails and raining sky to make sure this dude's okay. So she makes it on foot. I don't know where they're at, but the thing is, she makes it on foot with the entire world attacking her. She gets kidnapped at one point. She makes it all the way to this dude's house. And a hardcore religious dude has tied that pastor to a fence and let him be rained on several times.
Ooh.
As judgment for loving his homosexual daughter. And then that follows through with the story of how she responds to that and all the things. They wrap up book 4 well enough that book 4 literally could have been the end to the series, and it would have been applause worthy. Apparently, there's a 5th issue. I don't know where it goes from here, honestly. But it had good. Yeah.
Wow.
So, less great transition. Put the balls in your court, Chris.
Yeah, that's fair, but it's one of those that Rain is now one of those things I have to pick up and trade because I hate missing the beginning and then trying to catch up, and sometimes you can't because books like image books tend to disappear from comic book shelves and all that good stuff. So it's something I'm interested in. So so as I transition to yell at DC / applaud them, that's a transition anyway. Wow. So yeah, DC Flashpoint Beyond number 0. So clearly this month is put the word beyond in the middle of a DC comic book month. But I want to talk about Flashpoint Beyond because we are revisiting the continuity issues that are within the DC comic book universe, but it also is finally, because we have to back up slightly. Doomsday Clock was supposed to be like this major thing that occurred, and the needle moved during Doomsday Clock as this, post-Watchmen. It was a rebirth story of how all these universes somehow touch. It technically connected the Watchmen universe to the writ large universe, which means that Alan Moore is shaking his fist in the middle of a forest somewhere in Great Britain.
No, Alan Moore is doing a BBC masterclass on how to tell stories. That's what Alan Moore's doing.
Yes, but he's still shaking his fist at every time DC tries to do things to his beloved Watchmen. But yes, he is doing a masterclass, and that's equally entertaining to me. Because the dude is wild. But here we are. So it also ties back to the original Flashpoint. And let's just say the point to all of this is it's all Barry Allen's fault. End of story. Let's go home. Right? I covered it. We're good?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically. So DC is continuing to tell the story of what's actually, quote unquote, going on. So it's the self-explaining navel gazing of what is actually DC continuity, what is not DC continuity, and Shark jumped. Let's do this. We have the back and forth of the original Flashpoint of Thomas Wayne, of Bruce's father, in the alternate universe doing some investigative stuffs that is more aware of the changes in the writ large universe, and that his son, who is Batman in the other world. Look, this is going to be confusing, so just YouTube this stuff later, okay? And is re-putting on the cowl in the Flashpoint universe to, detective some stuffs with his gun, because that's how he rolls in the Flashpoint universe. But then on the other side of the universe, we see Bruce with the mime and the marionette from Doomsday Clock, and they're working towards some stuffs. But end of the day, here's the thing. We get Batman's chalkboard of infinite realities or crises, or insert terminology here.
It literally looks like a scene straight out of 52, by the way.
Right? And on one version of this chalkboard, we see 5G with a thing crossed through it. So, like, DC hardcore leaning into this. We have averted the 5G timeline.
But at what end, guys? At what end?
And so, for those of you that don't know, that was what was supposed to come after Rebirth, and unofficially / quasi-officially is why Dan Didio lost his job, supposedly. And where a lot of the Future State stuff came from, but Future State then didn't become the replacement, but a parallel. And that places us here in a thing called, and should I apologize for this now or later? But anyway, we are at what DC is now referring to as the Divine Continuum. I'm going to let that sink in for a second. The Divine Continuum, also known as the DC.
Oh, I didn't even get that. Boo. Boo. Boo with me. Boo.
Bro.
Congratulations to the 5 people that got the Rent reference, but yes.
Right.
Oh no, guys. Oh no.
So under the Divine section, we see what is supposedly what most of us have come to accept as continuity. The metaverse, the multiverse, the dark metal stuff, all of that falls under that. And then there's kind of some future statey / other stuff that falls under the continuum. It's not explained. It's literally a chalkboard, and it's the rest of us nerds out here kind of trying to read between the lines until they literally poke us in the chest and tell us. But what it mostly feels like is what they've already said, but now they're kind of doubling down on, which is everything falls in a continuum somewhere. Some of those things are the continuity that Legacy is used to. Some of those are just cool stories told with these pieces of information and characters that we know and love, but are literally just their instances in isolation. So, looking at that list, like the Murphyverse technically falls on the continuum side versus continuity. Some of the Future State stuff falls in there. Things that have been in Black Label that are one-offs kind of fall over there. So cool stories, but technically don't impact continuity. I don't know. I feel like we're re-explaining the same thing, or we're preparing to unexplain it all again, because remember, this Flashpoint Beyond story, or Flashpoint Continued story, is being told literally a month out from the death of Justice League in Justice League 75, which is going to set up the Dark Crisis, right? I'm losing track of what the crises are. This is where we at, fam.
Did you see that Dark Crisis also is DC? Mine is an evil laugh.
I quit. So look, there's a lot going on in DC continuity, and yes, it's confusing.
Let me just say one thing. I do think that the most interesting thing about Flashpoint Beyond Zero is that you have a character that is fully aware that his timeline just changed back.
Right. Yeah, no, and that's why it's on my list is, look, there are downsides to this, but there's a lot going on here that, okay, I want to see it play out. But ultimately, it's Barry's fault, and Thomas Wayne clearly has a feeling about that, and stuff happens. You should pick it up just to see what Thomas does, because that happened.
Martha.
Yeah. Well, we also get the reminder that that Bruce's mommy in Thomas Wayne continuity is the Joker, and you're welcome. And whoo. Yeah, family reunions on the other side are kind of oops. So yeah, Flashpoint Beyond Zero. The rest of my polls are slightly happier by comparison, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also not. So 7 Secrets, number 16. Yep, 7 Secrets is still great, still pretty, still crazy. Like I said last time, we're starting to learn that a lot of the secrets aren't necessarily random things in these briefcases that people have carried around, but actual angels and or demons, or really we don't know what the good version is, but we know that one of the things turned into a demon, so congrats. And that our main protagonist was one of the secrets as well, but we find out that he isn't really at his mature secret power, I guess is a way to say it. And, well, he has a really bad day at the end of issue 16. Apparently... Yep, no, at least 2 of my things end with significant characters having a bad day at the end. So 7 Secrets is careening towards what feels like a conclusion. So if you've been along the ride for this long, you should keep reading. I don't think it is anywhere near what I thought it would be at the beginning, but it's still been a fun journey. So pick it up and read it. My next one is from the Dark Horse Comicses, and it's Radio Spaceman number 2. I told you about Radio Spaceman number 1, and that it was just a crazy, very old school, pulpy comic space-time adventure, and, well, it ends as a very pulpy, crazy space-time adventure with not just crazy space-time adventures and crazy kaijus on alien planets and rescue missions, but also vampires, and you're welcome. Yeah, if any of those words sound interesting, then this is your jam. If any of those words are highly confusing and don't belong in the same sentence, this is not your jam. But I just love it because it is just that really neat, old school, very pulpy, very colorful. None of this makes sense, yet I'm still following the story cool kind of thing. And I like it when comics sometimes just disconnect, and that's what we get. And it's only a 2-part story, so too easy to jump in and enjoy. And then my final, which should come to absolutely no one's surprise, is Moon Knight number 10. Moon Knight continues his utter insanity in the current run. There's some reveals. Some stuff happens. And Moon Knight does what Moon Knight does when things get revealed, and he punches things in the face and murderizes. Because, you know, that's the default setting of Moon Knight. The Fist of Khonshu is going to beat things in the face. So, you know, Batman beats things in the face for DC. Moon Knight is the, hey, do you need that thing puncherized? Because I am here and I got you, fam. But Moon Knight 10 also is kind of a culmination of a lot of what felt like random character visitations are back. And he has resolved kind of what I feel is kind of the true resolution of the first arc of this particular version of Moon Knight and the Midnight Mission and being the Fist of Khonshu. So it's, if you're watching the show, the current run is going to be confusing as all get out. If you're watching the show, you need to pick up the Lemire run, and you will feel much more at home with what's going on.
Well, see, that's useful information for the people.
Oh, I feel so that if I had not said that before, that yes, if you're watching
we've not said that.
The Moon Knights, it is definitely there's a lot of throwbacks to a lot of things like Marvel does, but the main-ish story really is a good chunk of Lemire's run, which made me happy inside because like everything down to the Mr. Knight suit and lots of stuff and the back and forth there, yeah. And everyone that really, really, really thought that he was fighting Werewolf from Werewolf by Night, and then he literally says, no, that's a jackal. Yeah, that's important. Because the jackals and Amet and everything is pretty much kind of the core of the Lemire run. And so, yeah, there's your freebie. Because knowledge is power, the more you know, that kind of stuff.
You are listening to the Pull List Podcast.
This week in Nerd History, the hunt for Nessie.
Nerd History.
In 1933, George Spicer went for a drive with his wife through the Scottish Highlands. The couple saw a large, unfamiliar creature pass in front of their car and disappear into nearby Loch Ness. They later described the creature as having a huge body with no limbs and a long neck. A few weeks later, a motorcyclist made similar claims, describing a prehistoric marine creature with 4 large fins and a long neck. These reported sightings sparked excitement among the general public and drew many more visitors to the lake, hoping to catch a sight of what would soon be dubbed the Loch Ness Monster. But was it real? In November of that year, the first piece of photographic evidence emerged, a blurry, streaked photo that kind of appeared to show the shape of a long-necked animal in the water. However, many people also said it looked more like a dog with a big stick in its mouth. However, a few months later, on April 21st, 1934, the Daily Mail published what is arguably the most famous picture of the monster. Known as the surgeon's photograph, the photo was reportedly made by a doctor named Robert Kenneth Wilson. The photograph depicts the trademark long neck of Nessie emerging from rippling water. For decades, believers and critics debated the authenticity of this photograph with a myriad of theories about its subject. This photo and the tales behind it brought hundreds to Loch Ness that year, thousands more in the years to come. In fact, even to this day, Nessie fans come in hopes to spot the elusive creature. Of course, there's a reason why no one has gotten another photo, because even this one was suspect when you really saw the whole thing. The Daily Mail cropped the photo for publication, but the full photo greatly reduces the size appearance compared to the water, to where it seems that it's only a couple feet long. In 1994, Christopher Sperling verified the photograph was a hoax by admitting his involvement in its production. Sperling was the stepson of Marmaduke Wetherell, a famed big game hunter who had been hired in 1933 by the Daily Mail to find the Loch Ness Monster. After getting caught in a hoax faking giant footprints, Wetherell, hoping to restore his credibility, enlisted Sperling's help to create a model of the monster's neck and place it on a toy submarine. Robert Kenneth Wilson was chosen to give the photograph to the media because of his trusted reputation as a doctor. Though the photo is not proof of a monster in Loch Ness, it does stand as an important part of photo history and serves as a reminder of photography's fickle relationship with the truth. I'm Radio Matt. See you next time for more Nerd History.
What's up, nerd? Are you enjoying this podcast? Well, the audio enjoyment doesn't end there. Tune in to LTN Radio for the best Christian rock, rap, pop, and indie 24/7. Not to mention a whole network of podcasts, shows, specials, and shorts, many of which air on LTN Radio before they're available anywhere else. Join us at ltnonair.com to see our schedule, stream our station, and download our app.
LTN Radio.
You are listening to the Pull List Podcast with Chris Poirier and Hector Miron, part of the Love Thy Nerd podcast network.
So let's wrap out this bad boy with the number one that you had to take home. And you said that you were on the female lead and the Marvel / independent run. So what you got?
So if you are aware, there's a man in the comic book world named Jim Starlin.
Yeah, we've heard of that guy.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of being in Jim's presence many a time, and he is also a favorite of comic creators. Like, even if readers right now don't know who he is, in some ways, and I don't say that with shade, but not the average kid picking up pulls knows who Jim Starlin is these days.
Right. You have heard of a Thanos before?
Yeah. But, they only know Josh Brolin Thanos, bro. Fair, right? But he is, a comics legend. He put out an independent one-shot book with Aftershock. Like, no before, no after. And it's basically the story of and I say this with no shade, but it's basically just Poison Ivy. But not for legal reasons. But it's what would happen if Poison Ivy, you got to watch her entire life play out.
So right. So similar yet legally distinct. Got it.
Yeah. So it's a woman who realizes early on that she has control over plant life, and uses it to, as a child, kill her abusive foster people.
Oh, dang.
And then basically she goes on a serial killer romantic life story. By the way, it's called Midnight Rose. I didn't even say the title. And for discrepancy and discretion, there aren't many covers of this that are PG. They may not be R, but they are also not, hey, I'm going to put a picture of this on my Instagram either. There's not a ton of nudity in the book, but it is very implied. But it also doesn't feel like, ooh, this is dirty. It's just shit, a naked plant lady.
Right.
But it's her pursuing romantic relationships, and anytime a dude remotely disrespects her, she turns them into a plant and lets them biodegrade and be thrown away.
Okay.
So she's and so you've got cops chasing her down because they think she's a serial killer, and to the point where she actually gets caught, and then she straight has a tree nearby the police station just straight up murder all the police.
Whoa. Okay.
And then she finds a new dude who is actually really good to her and the love of her life, and they have a nice life, and it plays out well. She does a little dirt for him just to keep him from being arrested, but they have a nice life. It plays out well, and then when he dies, she doesn't want to keep living the way that she's living, so she wraps herself in the trunk of a tree that engulfs her and implants her into the earth, and she basically turns herself into a tree trunk. And through that, the story ends with I don't know what time span went on it, but 4 new roots sprouted up and eventually turned into new versions of her of different stylings. So generations later, I don't know, but it's literally a slice of life. Aftershock's been doing these little one-shot books that are horror slices of life that honestly would be stuff you would see on Tales from the Crypt. Because they did one with a tattoo story that I really loved last year. Maybe I don't remember what it was called, but they did a tattoo story that was a single Aftershock. So this was the murderous love life of Pamela Isley without being Pamela Isley, and Jim Starlin doing it. And it looks like some straight old school art and stuff too. So For a one shot, it was a fun read, and there was some good dialogue about relationships and stuff in it.
Cool.
What's your number one?
My
Christopher?
number one from from
If you fancy.
if you fancy, from the worlds of the Image Comicses. I am recommending Breakout number one as a entirely less murdery Image option. Yeah, well, not everyone and not everything can be insert yourself into Dreamception and just murderize everything to make bad things go away. Slumber is still going to be cool. Can't wait. Anyway, Breakout number one. So the aliens showed up.
Not
Congrats.
the aliens.
Yep, they showed up, and they showed up in Borg cubes. I mean cubes.
Those aliens. So
yeah,
wily.
they're crazy, and for whatever reason, everyone basically went cool. So it was a very specific number, 200 and something cubes showed up, don't communicate, and then at night they basically just start shooting out robots that go and kidnap basically teenagers through young 20-somethings and take them up to the cubes, and nobody knows why, and it just kind of randomly happens. And
I saw this episode of Doctor Who.
Right? And
Literally.
so,
The Power of Three. Doctor Who. Season 7.
Well, let me keep talking and we can find out how much closer.
Okay.
So this is life that, the robots come, they steal the people, they go up to the cubes, and everyone's like, cool, this is our life now. Question mark. And the story focuses on a person who's in high school and whose brother had been taken, and they're like, one of the things they talk about their relationship with their brother is that they love stars and heist movies and building stuff. This is important because his brother gets taken by, the robot alien people up to the cube, and he's like, cool, I'm going to do something about it. And he goes hackerizing onto the dark webs and finds all these conspiracy videos about, looking at all this independent research of the cubes aren't alien. They're human. They come from here. But nobody believes me. Here's your tinfoil hat. But anyway, he basically finds his way through it. Major plot hole moment. Manages to buy one of the flying robots and reprogram it, which indirectly proves that it's human, I guess. They don't spend a lot of time on that. Just the plot point of he went to the dark web, find out that crazy people think that right, the place next to the light web. Yeah. But yeah, goes out on super illegal Twitter and finds some folks that have one of the droid robot things, reprograms it, puts together a heist team, and they're starting to lay out the heist because they're going to a cube to break him out. See what happened there? Breakout? Got it? Mm-hmm. Good. So aliens, not aliens, possibly human. Don't know why they're stealing the kids, but a wily group of teenagers are going to ride a hijacked robot to get not captured, but captured to be able to heist the breakout cube to find his brother. And you know what? It's just crazy enough that I'm like, yeah, I'm in. Okay. That's simple enough. Good. Because I kind of want to know how that ends. And sometimes, like I said earlier, that's all I want from comics. So good job. You did it. You did it, Image. You gave me a story that I'm like, I feel like I've heard this story before, but I have a feeling it's going to be different.
Well, let me change my statement. It's Doctor Who Season 7, The Power of Three, and the season finale of Doctor Who Season 3. Literally, those stories combined make this Captain Planet, and that's where you got just what you just said.
Oh, that makes sense. And, I mean, there is the age-old adage of there is nothing new under the sun, just told slightly differently, but we shall see. So, Breakout number 1, Image Comics, for your conspiracy heist movie, and Midnight Rose number 1 for not Poison Ivy's life story.
Yes, for the Kmart Poison Ivy life.
Nailed it. Well, that's going to do it for us here at the Pull List Podcast. Episode 69 is now in the books and in your ears, but we couldn't possibly do this alone.
Because we don't taste as good as we sound.
Ooh, okay. That's probably true. You should not clean your earbuds with your mouth is definitely good, solid advice
disgusting.
from the Pull List Podcast. So, and as you know, we couldn't do this alone. We have lots of other nerdy friends and weird friends like us that do amazing podcasts on different nerdy topics over on the Love Thy Nerd podcast network. So be sure to visit lovethynerd.com for more info, previous episodes, and maybe find yourselves a new show to add to your nerdy routine. Hector and I do, from the bottom of our hearts, want to thank each of you for choosing us as your primary comic book knowledge factory on a near weekly basis. We've been doing pretty good this season, just gonna say that. So don't leave us hanging.
Time. We have delivered.
We have done the thing. We've made the podcast.
And thank you, Radio Matt, for holding it down. Matt. And I think Bubba, too, for that one episode as well.
Yep. So our producer raters help us to do things. So seriously, help us and them feel like we're doing the good stuff, and rate and review the show on your favorite podcasting app of choice. Give us them 5 stars because we're worth it. So check us out: iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, so many more. If we're not there, tell us. We'll put it there because we have the technology and people like Radio Matt and Bubba to help us with these things. So thanks for listening, and remember, kids, read more comics.